personnel, and I look forward to continuing that work with him now as chairman. But let us be clear. Law enforcement personnel are public servants, not public figures. When taking the oath, they did not seek celebrity. They stepped forward to safeguard our nation and uphold the laws enacted by this body. But that alone does not absolve them from facing any form of accountability. Public trust and public safety go hand in hand, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about how they believe agencies can strike an appropriate balance between officer safety and law enforcement accountability. Our witnesses today have seen the consequences of this rising harassment and violence firsthand. I hope their testimony reminds my colleagues and the American people that those who wear the badge are human beings whose dedication to safeguarding our country should never make them targets. This includes the local police who protect our communities around the country, as well as U.S. Capitol Police officers and D.C. Metro Police who keep us safe here every day as we work to represent our constituents. Officer Hodges, I acknowledge and appreciate the sacrifices you have made to keep us all safe. As I said then, and I believe now, violence against law enforcement is unacceptable and should always be condemned. We are and must remain a country of law and order. Today's hearing is not about silencing dissent or restricting free speech. It is about responsibility and recognizing that rhetoric has consequences and ensuring that officers can perform their duties without fear. We are reminded the dangers they face each year when names of fallen heroes are added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial here in Washington, D.C., which honors federal, state, local, and tribal officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice. These solemn moments and acts of remembrance reinforce the reality that each of these officers are human beings who leave behind families and loved ones. We must not become desensitized to this violence or willing to accept these dangerous trends as a new normal. To the brave men and women of law enforcement, you have our full respect and unwavering support. Thank you for your service. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for his opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and I welcome also our witnesses to this hearing. I also want to welcome our newest Democratic member to the committee, Representative James Walkinshaw of Virginia's 11th District. Mr. Walkinshaw is serving on the committee's Cybersecurity and Border Security subcommittees, and we look forward to his contributions to the committee's work. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by offering my condolences in the wake of the tragic shooting of Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf in the nation's capital last week. Our thoughts and the thoughts of all Americans continue to be with the families as they mourn Sarah's loss and pray for Andrew's recovery. Gun violence is a scourge of our country, and violence against troops and law enforcement officers is reprehensible. All Americans must condemn this violence, and the perpetrator must be held accountable. With that in mind, I appreciate Chairman Garbarino's holding today's hearing. Not only is this his first full committee hearing as chairman, but it's also the committee's first hearing in 4.5 months after the former chairman left Congress. Republicans shut down the government, and the Speaker sent the House home. It's past time for the committees to get back to work. It's my understanding that next week we will have Secretary Kristi Noem before us at our annual Worldwide Threat hearing, and that too is also long overdue. Never in the history of the committee has the Secretary of Homeland Security hidden from congressional oversight like she has, aided by a Republican majority that refuses to hold the Trump administration accountable. Secretary Noem has a lot to answer for, particularly about how she's using masked officers to terrorize communities, including American citizens, children, pregnant women, and seniors, putting law enforcement officers and the public at risk. We look forward to her appearance next week. As for today's hearing, I'm pleased that Republicans want to address violence against police officers, but quite frankly, I just can't get over their hypocrisy. Republicans have spent the last 5 years defending the armed mob that attacked police officers at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. They demanded pardons for the perpetrators and cheered when President Trump issued them. Republicans don't care that pardoning people who threaten and attack officers would encourage others to do the same. They did it anyway. Many Republicans voted to put this plaque, staff were displaying the poster, in the Capitol honoring the service and sacrifice of law enforcement on January 6th, but have since been silent on their leadership, still refusing to hang the plaque for fear of angering President Trump. Republicans care more about being in President Trump's good graces than they do about honoring officers who put their lives on the line to protect the Capitol on January 6th. Today, we're grateful to have one of those heroes, Officer Daniel Hodge, with us. His testimony to this committee and his prior testimony before the committee on January 6th attack, which I was honored to chair, is as insightful as it is powerful. Officer Hodges responded to the Capitol on January 6th, where he and his fellow officers were beaten, tased, and crushed by an armed mob that wanted to block the peaceful transfer of presidential power. I asked the clerk to play a video showing just a few moments of Officer Hodges and his fellow officers under attack at the Capitol on January 6th. Please be advised that the video contains strong language. Officer Hodges, no matter how many times you've seen it, I cannot imagine how difficult it is for you to watch that footage of yourself in the tunnel. There are no words to adequately describe that awful day, and no way fully express our appreciation for what you and your fellow officers did to protect all of us who were gathered in the Capitol that day. I know the threats of violence against you and other officers did not end on January 6th, but continue to this day. I thank you for being here and commend your bravery in continuing to speak out. Unfortunately, when it comes to condemning threats and violence from the far right, the silence from our colleagues on the other side is deafening. Until Republicans are willing to acknowledge the problem on their side of the political spectrum and do something about it, their statements about protecting police officers are hypocritical. And unless they are willing to call out how the Trump administration's illegal enforcement tactics are endangering law enforcement and the public right now, their statements about protecting police officers are meaningless. I urge Republicans to join us in condemning attacks against police, regardless of ideological motivation, and begin holding the Trump administration accountable for its actions. I thank the witnesses again for joining us today. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I'm pleased to have a highly distinguished panel of witnesses before us today. I ask that our witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you all, and please be seated. I would now like to formally introduce our witnesses. Michael Hughes is the Executive Director of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, where he leads strategic initiatives and oversees the organization's operations in support of its more than 33,000 members. Based in Washington, D.C., he joined the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association in March of 2025, following a distinguished 34-year career in law enforcement. Jonathan Thompson is the Executive Director and CEO of the National Sheriff's Association, the nation's preeminent nonprofit entity representing the interests of 3,080 sheriffs in the United States and their deputies. Previously, he was a principal with Referral Communications, helping organizations plan and implement their communication strategies on a wide variety of public affairs, public relations, and government outreach endeavors. Patrick Yose is the National President for the Fraternal Order of Police. Over his career, Patrick has served on commissions and charitable and community service boards. He's a strong law enforcement advocate, holding leadership positions on his state, local, and national FOP boards. Nearly 36 years as an active law enforcement officer, Patrick retired in 2020 at St. Charles Sheriff's Office, the sole law enforcement agency for the St. Charles Parish, Louisiana, a suburb 18 miles west of New Orleans. Daniel Hodges is an officer of the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia, where he served since 2014. Before joining MPD, he served in the Virginia National Guard. Within MPD, he is assigned to patrol duties and is a member of the department's Civil Disturbance Unit 42, which handles large demonstrations, crowd control, and emergency riot response. I thank all the witnesses for being here today. I now recognize Mr. Hughes for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you on behalf of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, representing more than 33,000 federal criminal investigators, police officers, and law enforcement professionals nationwide. I spent more than 34 years in federal law enforcement as an investigator, supervisor, senior executive, and political appointee. I led the U.S. Marshal's Office here in Washington, D.C., and concluded my government service as Director of Interpol Washington, coordinating our nation's global law enforcement efforts with Interpol and international partners. Today, I'm honored to serve as FLEO's Executive Director, advocating for the men and women who protect our country every day. Throughout my career, one thing has remained constant. Federal officers remain unwavering in their oath to the Constitution and their duty to enforce the laws Congress enacts, regardless of the political environment. What has changed is the environment in which they serve. It has grown increasingly hostile, with rising violence, threats, and online harassment directed at officers and increasingly at their families. Risk has always been part of federal law enforcement, and the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial stands as a solemn reminder of the ultimate sacrifices officers make when carrying out a sworn duty to protect and serve others. But what we are seeing today is unprecedented in scope and intensity. A heightened polarization surrounding federal law enforcement's role in immigration enforcement and efforts to reduce violent crime in major cities has placed officers in greater jeopardy than at any point in my career. In 2024, the FBI reported more than 85,000 assaults on law enforcement, the highest number in a decade. Ambush attacks continue to climb. ICE officers alone have seen assaults increase more than 1,100% this year. These are staggering numbers that reflect the very real dangers officers face simply for carrying out the laws that Congress has enacted. The tragic ambush attack last week, only blocks from the White House, that killed West Virginia National Guard Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and critically injured Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf makes this painfully clear. They had been sworn in less than 24 hours earlier in support of joint efforts to reduce violent crime. We mourn Specialist Beckstrom and pray for Sergeant Wolf's recovery. And the danger isn't limited to violence in the field. Doxing, digital harassment, and threats aimed at family members have become disturbingly common. In one instance, individuals followed an ICE agent home, live-streamed it, and posted his address online. These are not hypothetical threats. They have real, lasting consequences. Constructive criticism of law enforcement is healthy, and accountability is essential. But what we are seeing today from some public figures, segments of the media, and even some elected officials is not accountability, it is vilification. When officers are depicted as political actors or adversaries rather than public servants, that rhetoric fuels hostility and makes already difficult jobs even more dangerous. Federal officers are your neighbors. They are parents, veterans, volunteers in their communities, and even family members. Reducing them to political characters is inaccurate, corrosive, and dangerous. We believe strongly in accountability, but accountability must be paired with protection. Officers who fear for their safety or the safety of their families cannot perform at their best. And at a time when nearly a third of our federal law enforcement workforce is eligible for retirement and recruitment and retention is already a challenge, this rising threat environment poses a serious national security concern. Congress has tools to address this, and my written statement outlines several long-standing but urgently needed measures. Taken together, they would send a strong message that Congress stands with those who uphold the law. Federal officers enforce the laws you enact. They protect our borders, communities, and national security out of a deep sense of duty. Rise in targeted violence and corrosive rhetoric threatens their safety and erodes public trust. We cannot allow this trend to continue. Protecting those who protect us is not a partisan issue, it is a national responsibility. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
All right, so we're listening in there to the House Homeland Security hearing on anti-law enforcement rhetoric and how that can lead to violence against police officers. Now, as we've been hearing from the speakers here several times, this comes after 2 Guard members were shot, 1 fatally, and also the Pentagon saying all National Guard agents continuing to patrol D.C. will now be armed. We do know Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom died just a day later on Thanksgiving, and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf remains in the hospital. We are going to step away for a 2-minute commercial break. We'll head back to that on the other side.
Right now at Papa John's, create your own pizza for only $9.99. Any toppings on original, thin, or New York style crust. All $9.99. Usually a pizza with no artificial flavors, colors, or additives costs more. But Papa John's knows you deserve better. Order now.
I checked Allstate first and saved hundreds on my car